Welcome back, everybody. So I was printing this leg piece from Wicked's Beast. I'll leave the link for their Patreon on the descriptions below. And I realized my printer was doing way too many retractions and taking a lot of time to print. As you know, I like to print in 0.08 layer height to get maximum detail. And as you can see here, the whole leg is taking me 1 day, 2 hours and 46 minutes. And the retractions, they add up to 24% of that, 6 hours and a half basically. So I went on to the slicer itself to check on why it was taking so long and why was it doing so many retractions and travels. So you see here it does the internal wall, the mid wall, the external wall, then it moves on to the infill, and that should be pretty much the layer done. But then it does a lot of retractions and z-hops because of this setting that I found it was enabled in my slicer. So it ended up going through the whole body again, trying to fill these tiny little gaps, which in reality doesn't really add any filament. So if you look at the slide here, these tiny yellow dots that you see is adding up too much time in my print. See here and there, so it goes all around the perimeters trying to fill these tiny little gaps, which I don't think it makes any difference. So to get rid of that, I did find these settings. So in Cura you're gonna go and type for gap, and you see here it's few gaps between walls. I'm gonna enable just the travel so you can see with that set to everywhere, it does a lot of retractions and travels because it goes all around the perimeter of the layer again, filling all these tiny little gaps. And of course, as you know, if you do a lot of retractions, you might have some clogs or anything like that. So I've disabled that, so I set that to nowhere. You can also filter that to tiny gaps here. They do exactly the same thing. You can play with the settings if you notice your walls are not touching each other, so you have a gap between them. But in this case, I'm going to set exactly as you see here. And this is how it looks like in the print. You see I have Z-hop enabled, so every time it tries to fill that tiny little bit of gap, it hops up and travels, and there's barely any filament coming out of the nozzle. And once more, it's just finishing the walls here, just like we saw in the slicer. Now into the infill, I'm using Geroid, 2% by the way, and then hopping, and as you can see, the extruder does a bunch of retractions, and also of course because of Z-hop, the Z motor is also doing a bunch of work that's unnecessary. I'm just gonna kill this off on my next part that I'm gonna be printing. This is the left leg, which I've already sliced. So on the right one, I'll see the differences. Right, so I've hit slide, and as you can see, the number of hours already dropped over 1 day, 2 hours. Now it's 21 hours. And if you look at the retractions, look at the difference. About 4.5 hours of saving just on retractions. So yeah, not only it will give us a faster printer, but also a bit of longevity in our parts. Let's have a look again on the slice itself. So inner wall, mid wall, outer wall, infill, and that's it. That's the end of the layer. So this is how you save a lot of time. In my case here, in this print in particular, about 15 to 20% of time. And to show you here, if you set that to everywhere and filter out the tiny gaps, it does exactly the same thing. You see 21 hours 2 minutes. You can leave it like this if you want to make sure in the event of having a big gap, you also fill that one. So that goes well for structural parts and anything like that, but in my case I'll just leave it out. And this is the end of the right leg. I didn't see any change in quality for my statues, so I will definitely be saving that to my profile and save me a lot of time doing my statue sprint. And this is a look of the final statue. This is Beast from Wicked 3D. I'll leave the link for his Patreon on the description below, together with the filament I use for this one if you fancy that. Try to catch all the details here. Hopefully you can see that in the camera. So as you can see, no degradation in print quality at all. So thanks for watching. See you next time.